Podcast. We'll be sitting down with a fresh guest each week. Someone who shares the same kayak fishing passion that runs through our veins. We're talking kayak anglers, kayak companies, lure experts. Heck, anyone who's got a story to tell about landing the big ones from a kayak. We're setting our sights on becoming the #1 kayak fishing podcast in the world. You'll get a chuckle, a grin, and hey, maybe even a belly laugh. Because we believe in the power of humor. But above all, we're here to educate and inspire. So, whether you're a seasoned kayak angler or just dipping your toes into this exhilarating world, join us on the Kayak Fishing Obsessed podcast. It's time to reel in adventure, camaraderie, and the joy of the catch. Here's your host, Darren Windle.
Fish freaks, welcome to episode number 141 of the KFO show, Kayak Fishing Obsessed. And Wyatt, tonight is going to be a banger. We're diving into the science behind how trophy largemouth feed around bluegill and shad and crayfish with the science of the straight, guys. And this is this type of stuff that can completely change the way you look at bass fishing, right? Not just what lure should I throw, but why do bass position where they do? Why do giant bass behave differently, and how understanding forage behavior can help you become a way more consistent angler. So if you ever wondered why some lakes grow absolute giants or why sometimes bass seem impossible to pattern, tonight we're going to break a lot of that down. This is going to get nerdy in the best way possible. And really quick, before we hop in, if you fish from a kayak, and I know many of you do, be sure to go check out KFAST, Kayak Fishing Advanced Safety Training. It's an affordable safety training course built to help anglers make smarter decisions on the water with topics like PFDs, weather awareness, cold water safety, trip planning, self-rescue, and more. The sport's growing fast. We want to make sure people are around a long time to enjoy it. All right, guys, let's start this off with my favorite segment of the week. Does Wyatt still have a job? All right, boss, what do we got?
I mean, I was fishing today. I was fishing the other day. I'm going to be fishing tomorrow. So,
are you ever working? When's the last time you actually put in an hour of work, Wyatt?
What's today? Tuesday? Yeah. Sunday. Yeah, it's a couple days ago.
How do you even support yourself? You're fishing more than you're working.
Just gotta win enough tournaments and live.
There you go. Win enough tournaments, says the man with a wallpaper of checks. I love it. Well, still's got a job. We lost a bet because the end of last month we had people over and under whether you're gonna still have a job. You still have one.
Yep.
Have you been talked to?
Yeah, I get the okay. So I did have to like concede Memorial Day. So because I request the entire week of Memorial Day off.
Yeah,
the entire week after Memorial Day off. But I was like, I'll work Memorial Day actually because I don't want to be on the water Memorial Day. I want to be as far away from the water as possible. Then.
Oh my gosh. Well, bro, I'm excited that you're able to live your best life now. All right, let's go get Corbin. Corbin, welcome to the show. Sam, welcome back to the show. I'm telling you what, because of you guys, I got completely brand new internet. I mean, I changed companies after that show.
Heck yeah.
I had that crappy internet that comes through wireless towers, and it was good for 6 months. And then your show happened, and everything fell apart. So
blew up the stream.
Go big, go home. So it's been a couple months since I had you guys on. Me personally, you guys are like one of my favorite guests, mostly because I think you guys are awesome, right? I love the science. I love your backgrounds, how you bring the science to it. I love your YouTube channel, like one of the most underrated YouTube channels I've come across in a long time. I'll continue to say that. How you guys only have 1,000 subscribers blows my mind. But you also got a lot of things going on, right?
Yeah.
You got professions. I mean, look at you. You guys are in collared shirts right now, button down. Might be the first time in KFO history we've had two guys on with dress shirts on. What is going on?
Yeah. Heck yeah. No, hey, we super appreciate being back. Things have been good. Life is busy, as you know, Sam and I do Science of the Strike for the love of the game. We do it in addition to our full-time jobs. And so we come straight from the office and hop on with y'all, which is, we wouldn't want it any other way. But things have been good. Science of the Strike is growing. We hope that one day we won't be as underrated as you say, as things are right now. We agree. We are seeing some momentum, which we're excited about, but we're good. We've got some really great stuff in the works right now that we think will be bigger than the podcast. And so that will be slowly being released throughout the next couple months. But
No. You can't tickle that out there. I'm not a largemouth bass. You can't just throw the lure out there. Me short striking. You come on. What's going on?
We're working on a project that we actually just opened up an application for a focus group. We're taking applicants to come in to do a test run on something that we're putting together. We and again, I'm not going to get into this super specific with it because we're actually having the people who apply, we're going to actually have them sign NDAs on how we're going to proceed with this. But we're trying to do something that's never been done before in the industry. We feel like that's kind of where the show, we feel like we're doing that a little bit with our show. And so we want to keep that going. And so if you're listening to this show right now and you're interested in being a member of the focus group, free of charge, completely free, and you're dedicated to the science of the sport of bass fishing, check out our most recent YouTube episode. Or the link to the application is there. But I know I'm teasing you.
Are you a lawyer? You're a lawyer, right? You said like 3 minutes of stuff without saying a single thing.
And that's what I'm trying to do for a living.
Yeah, you nailed it. I'm going to call it off, but you nailed it. I feel like you gave me something, but I'm still hungry. Like,
there you go.
Here's a pizza.
That was the goal. Mission accomplished.
I still got
we need people like Wyatt who fish every day to do this.
Exactly right. Exactly right. We need people whose jobs are on the line for the science. That's what we need.
That's Wyatt. And my goodness, he's leading the way on another app. I know that. So my goodness, no one catches more bass than this guy. All right, so I want to hop in. I'm happy for you guys. Real quick before we hop in, that's awesome. I don't know what you guys got cooking, but when it's up and cooking and when you can talk about it, you reach back out. We'll get you on the show so we can chat. Bigger than the podcast. I'm excited about that. Where are you guys gonna find the time? I mean, you're both high-level professionals. When do you get the fish?
Weekend warriors.
We are weekend warriors.
Do your wives want to kill you? Do you feel guilty at all? I literally had a guy reach out last week. He's like, bro, I don't know how you do it. Like, I got 2 kids and I feel guilty every time I hop in the boat. Like, what do I do? I was like, I'm not even going to answer. I don't even know what to tell you.
Yeah, no, it's tough, but we're lucky. We've got a great support team at home, for both of us. And that's not only with fishing, but with the show, which is what's really cool. The show's been just, it's taken off in ways we couldn't imagine, and to have the support not only from, all of our listeners, but from the folks at home, really means a lot to both Sam and I, including you great people. We super appreciate being back on your all show. We really enjoyed being on here last time, and we're looking forward to the discussion tonight.
I like it. Well, let's hop into that discussion. You got some people over here in the comment section. Justin Faircloth said, "Sign me up."
Heck yeah.
Kayak bass fishing national champion right there. Also, Wyatt's fishing partner. So those guys are like bass addicts.
Let's go.
I know.
Link is in episode 24 description.
There we go. All right, folks. Let's hop in. Let's get into this, because essentially I'm taking 3 videos that you guys have done and we're putting it into one podcast.
Yeah.
And so you guys did 3 different videos essentially, and I just basically used AI to create my own title. But you broke down, all different types of prey, largemouth bass prey. You got crayfish, you got your shad, and you got your bluegill, and you guys went into detail on it. So I went through and listened to some of it and coalesced some of it into a variety of questions, because a lot of times YouTube is just full. Everybody wants to know the lure. They think the lure is going to be it. If I put this lure on, then instant bass. And what people don't realize that, lure in Wyatt's hands and the lure in a newbie's hands, that's a different day, all day, every day. And so it's the understanding that comes along with it. And so that's tonight. We want to crack the code, the feeding habits of trophy largemouth. And this is something that I don't think about often. It's like, okay, I think about the lure and I think about a lot of conditions, but I really haven't become what I teach others, become a expert in largemouth bass, but also become an expert in largemouth on what to eat, right? Because that's going to pull them. All right. So all that said, when you guys study largemouth, What is the biggest we'll start here. What's the biggest misconception anglers have about how bass actually feed? What's something you guys run into often?
Wow, that's a huge question.
Whoa, yeah, that is a huge question. The biggest myth as it relates to
feed.
how they, yeah, jeez.
I feel like one major one is the timeline of jumps that people have from whether it's a shad-based bait to a hard bait to a soft bait, back to a hard bait, back to a soft bait or a jig. In a sense, people oftentimes follow that hard and fast rule. Like the spawn's here, I'm going to pick up something soft, a soft bait or a jig, or something like that. And then it gets to, back around to the fall, it's like, I'm picking back up a jerk bait, and then it becomes, I'm picking back up a minnow, instead of, really exploring what the bass is actually feeding on at certain times, given different forages in your certain lakes. So I feel like that was a huge misconception that me and Corbin kind of talked about a little bit going through all of these things, but that's what we see often for the lay angler, I would say.
Do you think the average angler is just trying to compartmentalize all the information that's out there into simple rules for themselves?
You're probably not far off with that. That would make sense, and that's easy for a lot of people to do, right? And they catch fish once or twice, they gain their confidence, and that lure stays in their hand for a certain period of time, right? And that's just how fishing works, right? Until you can really expand on the whys, which is what Corbin and I really tried to do with our podcast, to explain the differences that arise in certain situations and when you're really trying to get in the nitty gritty. And that's what we talk about in every episode.
Yeah.
As it relates to misconceptions, as it specifically relates to the prey miniseries that we do, I would say that one thing I find Sam and I talking about consistently is something that we actually did a whole separate episode on in episode 12, which is bite mechanics. And where the misconception, or I think where people might overlook something in a variety of prey that you might be imitating, is not just the length of the bait, but it's actually the height of the bait. Okay. A lot of people, will look at a glide bait or a swim bait and think oh my God, to someone who's maybe unfamiliar with swim bait fishing, they might say oh my gosh, anything 6, 7, 8 inch swim bait or glide bait is just not feasible to throw. Whereas in reality, the height of that actual bait plays more of a role in a bass determining whether or not it's going to strike or not, compared to the overall length of the bait. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but and I'm sure we'll talk about bluegill later, but we see a lot of that when we start looking into some of the studies about favoritism towards shad or other types of prey species compared to bluegill and stuff like that.
What's bunny trail? I mean, we're talking about it now. Let's just start going down that rabbit hole, because I don't think I've ever heard anybody talk about length versus width of bait fish before. And so break this down. What studies are you pulling this from? What are you talking about specifically? Yeah,
so there's a number of studies, and we did, like I said, we did a whole episode not only on bluegill but also on bite mechanics. So
bite mechanics, for the lane.
Yeah, so there's actually a lot going on when a largemouth bass is attacking a prey. There's a lot of physics that are involved, not only in the hydrodynamics of the water pressure that is occurring around the bass's mouth and their gill plate and everything like that, but there's a lot of interesting mechanical mechanisms that are happening inside the actual jaw of the fish that varies greatly depending on the size of the bass, but also the size and type and status of the prey that they are consuming. And we've talked about this with a number of pros as well. And this is where you can kind of start to understand why certain bites feel differently, more consistently, right? So that's what I mean when I say bite mechanics. Now, as it relates to the bluegill stuff, there's a great study we referenced in episode 9 that was titled Experimental Analysis of Prey Selection by Largemouth Bass, Role of Predator Mouth Width and Prey Body Depth. That was the title of the study, and it was conducted by a guy named David Hambright, and he was trying to assess whether or not there was a preference by largemouth bass at a variety of different sizes to consume different prey types based on the prey type's length and actual height, right? And so they used fathead minnows as kind of being their cylindrical, like longer, skinnier prey type, and then they used pumpkin seeds, analogous to all different kinds of brim species that are popular across the country. And they wanted to see if those different size classes of largemouth would have an impact on the consumption rates. And it was interesting. The bass, when they were offered both the fathead minnows and the pumpkin seeds, right, they showed by far a highest preference for the prey that had a similar body depth, even though those preys were vastly different in length. Okay. And so intermediate bass selectively ate the largest fathead minnows available, but they preferred the smaller pumpkin seeds. Okay. And so to us, the way that we're understanding that data is that so much it's the whole profile, right, of the bait. It's not just the length, it's not just the height, and they want something that they can fit into their mouths, essentially using the different striking strategies that they have. But at the end of the day, really what we're trying to say here is that bass will shy away from eating bluegill if the bass isn't big enough. And I know that maybe sounds obvious, but because of the way that those bluegill are built, right, with the spines and everything like that, a bass will actually shy away from consuming a bluegill because they know, based off of the studies that we've read, that those spines can end up killing them if they're consumed in the wrong way. And I know Sam talked a little bit about this. We did an episode on crappie, that kind of similar deal, but that was a long answer.
No, I like long answers.
I nerd out.
No, this is maybe the nerdiest. I mean, we've used words like hydrodynamics and statics of prey. I mean, I was thinking as you were talking, Corbin, to be honest, how'd you guys find each other? Like, what in the world?
Oh, Sam
High
and I?
school.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we grew up together, grade school.
Like the same level of nerdiness. Like I felt like you just gave a.
We both went to enough years of school that we're like, surely we could be on the same nerd level here.
Yeah. So I mean, what does the average fisherman do with what you just said? It's like fantastic. You guys broke this down. You bring this to studies. Like, how does that inform?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there are a lot of different ways to what to do with this. I would say that if you are throwing a bluegill styled bait, specifically like a glide, one that comes to mind is going to be like the Gantarelle, or Jackal makes an even smaller, a real small glide. Sam and I typically reserve those baits and those colored baits for times when we are specifically targeting like a really, really big bite. Like if we're looking for a kicker in a tournament, or if we know that we're around really big fish, if we're taking a trip down south or something like that. If we're trying to catch a limit, we're staying away from that. Now, that's not to say that people can't have experiences where they have great success on like a bluegill style glides. Like, nothing that we say is absolute, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's
but
fishing, so
of course, of course. But that, I think that to us is the most simplistic way to apply this, is that if you're targeting something really, really big, that's when the bluegill baits come out. Sam and I, if we're trying to catch a limit, are going to more err towards like a shad style bait that has that more cylindrical profile, that color and profile wise will signal to a bass that I don't have to be careful about that. I don't have to be careful. I don't have to be cognizant about the way that I eat this. I mean, we've seen studies where these bass intentionally, and I think this was in episode 12, will change the directionality in which they strike a bluegill because they are cognizant of those spines getting caught if they were to eat them from behind. So you will see that bass will typically try to eat a bluegill head first, whereas we don't see that to be the case as much with shad. And so, again, long-winded answer, but
we've kind of seen. I mean, I don't know if you've been around the internet, right? You see bass laying on the surface, and they got bluegill in them backwards stuck. Yeah, and they're dead. They're just floating there. That makes sense to me. Wyatt, this question goes to you because you do a heck of a lot of fishing, and I mean, is this coalescing with what you know and what you've experienced? So you're like, okay, that kind of, are you piecing things together, or is it?
I mean, yeah,
completely-
like you're seeing like there's two big points to take away from that are like bass are swimming around looking at things and they're counting the calories of how much everything is and seeing like what's the most calories that I can actually fit in my mouth, and then they're picking off that. And I mean, I throw a lot of like my jigs and things like that will mimic bluegill, and I'm specifically targeting larger fish. But I mean, whenever I go to a spotted bass place or somewhere where I'm just trying to pick up a whole bunch of fish, it's shaky head and stuff like that. So I mean, it all coalesces.
Yeah, ties together for sure.
Yep.
Sam, sounds like you got something to say, or to piggyback on Corbin.
No, I was just gonna tag on to kind of what Wyatt was saying. Is like, Wyatt, when you go down south to, like you just said, you were down there at Santee and down South Texas. Are you looking to put a bigger bluegill size trailer on your jig? Do you look?
So I changed up. I changed up based on the fish that I'm seeing, because like I came back from Caddo, and down Texas Caddo, like all the fish have really large mouths.
Yes.
They're largemouth bass, but they have really large mouths. And I kept catching bluegill next to all the trees that I was fishing, catching big, giant red ear bluegills. So like the fish have gigantic mouths to eat those bluegill.
Right.
Whereas you go places like Lake Murray, where it's a herring place, they have kind of tiny mouths compared to those fish out in Texas, because they're a blueback herring, shad.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Adds with the science.
So here's a question for you. I'm going to keep on changing it up a little bit. Do you think big bass primarily become like energy efficient hunters as they age?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. We see that. We've seen that across a number of our episodes, whether that be from bite mechanics to metabolism. The number one thing I think that Sam and I say that we repeat on our show is that people do not give enough credit to largemouth bass. They are so much more sophisticated and intelligent than people ever believed, and the industry tries to lead on. Now, whether or not that intelligence is we were talking
contemplating the calories.
Contemplating the calories,
Yeah.
probably not, but more in an instinctual thing.
Yeah.
As it relates to their efficiency, it's interesting. Again, this goes back to bite mechanics. The studies that we read were talking about how larger bass compared to smaller bass actually have slower strikes than smaller bass do. They have more force because they're able to inhale more, create that vacuum.
Bigger vortex. Right. 100%.
Correct.
Makes sense.
Correct. And then as it relates to burst swimming and continuous chasing down swimming, we have seen that those bigger largemouth tend to engage in, they're more like they linger. Right, they're slower and they're more curious. They're less willing to engage in those long hunts, those long chases, and that's why a lot of times you throw a big glide bait. A lot of times you'll see, those big shadows, or like on live scope, you'll see those big shadows. Whereas a lot of times, some of the most eager fish that you see explode are going to be some of the smaller fish.
I mean, that makes sense where everyone's like, "Hey, jigs catch pigs," because jigs is a more slower, methodical, easier meal. And this is kind of making sense to me. This is why Wyatt has so many checks on his wall.
No, it's very true. We looked at one of the studies when we were doing crawfish, like specifically crawfish. And in that study, it showed that these larger fish oftentimes tend to have more crawfish in their stomach content when opened up and looked at than any other bait and that was available to them forage in that lake. Yeah. So for these lakes that they studied around Missouri and Kansas, I think it was Kansas impoundments. I can't remember exactly.
It was.
But that's what rang true. And, a lot of times you're going out for 5 bites in a tournament, so that's why Wyatt can catch those checks if he's just throwing a jig all the time, because he's getting the 5 right bites.
Or 6 or 75.
Yeah.
I like it. Another question for you is, how much of bass positioning, right, is dictated by prey movement versus comfort of the bass? Anything pop into mind from all these studies that you
yeah,
guys
I mean,
apparently-
so I don't know if I could make a blanket statement about that based off of a specific study that we've read, but one that does immediately come to mind is going to be the way that bass behave in relation to bluegill and the type of structure that the bluegill might be hiding in.
Mhm.
There was a study, where is it? It is called, the title of this study was The Predator-Prey Interaction Between Largemouth Bass and Bluegills as Influenced by Simulated Submersed Vegetation. Okay. And this was really interesting. They were essentially wanting to see how bass and bluegill behaved differently depending upon the volume of vegetation that the bluegill and or the bass were able to hide in or maneuver through. Okay. And so their behavior, to answer your question, differed greatly between those simulations that had zero cover for the bluegill to hide in versus what they considered to be a high density, which was 1,000 stems per square meter, or very, very dense
I'm sorry.
vegetation.
Who's counting these things? Who's
These
doing
scientists.
Who's doing these studies?
These
One stem,
Yeah.
two stem.
Literally.
three-
They did one. There were 0 stems, 50 stems, 250 stems, and 1,000 stems. I mean, they're going hard. Some of these studies,
Whose job is this? I don't
know.
understand.
I
What world do
know.
I live in right now?
they are dedicated.
These are the science fair projects that if I had known about whenever I was in high school, I probably would have done it more.
Yeah. Straight A, Wyatt Hammond.
100%.
Oh my gosh.
And so this study, as it relates to movement and hanging out and stuff like that, it demonstrated a few things. It obviously demonstrated that the largemouth bass success in capturing bluegill significantly declined as the vegetation density increased. And that makes sense. But what was interesting is that decline was not linear. Okay. So it was a really steep drop off. So the predation success for the largemouth bass was similar in open water with no vegetation and low density vegetation. Okay. But when it fell to nearly zero in those medium and high density vegetations. And when you talk about and you ask about the difference of being more of a chasing type bass and a more of a relaxed bass, those bass that were in the non-vegetative areas were more willing to cruise around and hunt and look around, right?
Yeah.
Which makes sense. But I don't know why this is interesting to me. These fish that were in this highly dense grass, or even medium dense grass, they stopped looking around. They essentially would sit still, right? They would sit really, really still. It makes me think of like the velociraptor in Jurassic Park, right? They would sit there and they would wait to see visual signals from these bluegill who were cruising through the grass or moving through the grass, and then they would ambush them. And what's interesting is those bluegill, when they're in open water, as we've all seen either with our eyes or with sonar, when they're in open water, they're together, right? They a lot of times you'll see them kind of near the surface of the water or stuff like that,
Yep.
right? Well, when they're in the grass, they completely ditch that, right? They spread out and they become more independent, and they just everything becomes this big chess match in the grass, right? Like waiting for movement. And so when you get more vegetation, and presumably more, timber or whatever it might be, the behavior from the bass changes extensively, right? To that more, I'm going to wait here and I'm going to wait for something that I can visually see and get, just see that movement and get within distance to strike. Whereas obviously you're out in open water, you're seeing a lot of cruising, and the behavior changes not only with the bass, but it also changes significantly with the prey, which to me, that is like the less intuitive part of it. But again, it all goes, if you understand how the prey behaves differently in different situations, you're going to understand how the bass behave differently in different situations and hence be more successful. So again, I am the worst at giving long-winded answers. I guess.
No, this is great. I think
that's why I do what I do for a living, I guess.
I think the moral of the story comes from Justin Faircloth. If I ever need a lawyer, I'm hiring this guy.
Yeah, let's go.
I don't know what type of lawyer you are, but you're getting a call
All right.
from
Yeah,
Justin.
you probably don't want to be getting a call from. I'm a prosecutor, so you don't want to be getting a call from me.
I love it. This is great. I didn't know that part.
Yeah.
So out of all the different prey we're going to be talking about tonight, bluegill, shad, crayfish, like which one's the most high value source compared to the other from your studies?
Man, that's a great question. I think the most
Loaded too. Sorry.
the most like at the base level of physiology, the most caloric dense bait would be the bluegill.
Okay.
But in terms
Risky.
of what it can do for a bass at certain times throughout the year, it may not be the most efficient for their metabolism or their goal to, whether that's store fat, grow as fast as they can, whatever it may be at certain points in the year, based on the size of the fish, what's going on, trying to spawn, whatever that may be. There can be other items like, say, a shad that actually carries more fatty acids, more omega-3s that can help it overwinter or, come out and be rejuvenated from a spawn maybe a little bit faster. So it is all time dependent, and it is all based on their ecosystem at that given moment, what their physiology is telling them that they need during certain times. But at its core, a bluegill probably has the most caloric dense content per gram of fish.
Okay.
Yeah.
So saying what you said,
Yeah.
is there a pattern there when it comes to spawning, pre-spawn, post, summer?
Well,
should you be targeting different prey for
100%.
larger bass?
Yes. I think one of the major misconceptions, kind of like we were talking about earlier, and me and Corbin have talked about on the show fairly often, is that you oftentimes see fishermen put down shad style baits around the spawn. They want to pick up something that's more, plastic oriented, whether that be a crawfish or whether that be a bluegill style bait, where they fish that around the spawn more often than not. But in reality, some of those fish are still pre-spawn. Some of those fish are spawning. You're never going to hit everything all in one time. When you go up north, it gets more condensed. But especially if you're in the south, they're spawning over a large range of time. We've learned about, the fractional spawning we talked about in our spawning episodes. But if you don't have some kind of shad pattern tied on at all times, we really think you're missing out, because there's always an opportunity at all times for that, where you might be fishing for, a pre-spawn fish and not realize it, throwing a bluegill style bait, and that fish might not be as interested in it, whether it knows why or why not. Inside it knows that it needs those omega-3s to, spawn, and those eggs give their eggs extra viability to be a successful hatch. So that's the main takeaway that I took from that, is don't jump so fast into putting down those shad style baits, because the bass need them to have their eggs be viable.
Yeah. That goes to that thing that we talked about earlier, is like, I don't think the bass is like thinking like, that gizzard shad has more lipids in it, so it will better support my eggs.
Right.
But like the data and the experience demonstrates that there is some type of intuitive, instinctual understanding that this is what I need at this time for this reason. And it's wild.
Like, you wonder why a jerkbait works so well in the pre-spawn, and like, you never know why, you just know it works. Right. So you throw it. But after reading all these papers about these gizzard shad, threadfin shad, where I think our next episode, we may be talking about herring, so we're really excited about that after seeing the Bassmaster there this past week. But with these shad, we learned so much about them and their importance in their, how the physiology, works throughout their system, and the effects it can have on their population success. No wonder it works so well coming into the pre-spawn. And when the shad spawn happens, like, it's very important for them to get those fatty acids and those lipids.
Yeah. Because right now here in Ohio, it's like spawn. Right, they're on beds, and of course you got pre, and you probably even got some big posts. But for all intents and purposes, and beds are out. They're sitting on beds. And swim jig right now for me is tearing it up. Right, I love swim jig. It's caught some of my biggest fish this year, last year, year before last. Big fan of the all-terrain tackle swim jigs with the KVD Rage Swimmer,
Yeah.
KVD Magic Color. I mean, it just, for whatever reason, I mean, I've dialed it in. I know where to fish it, and it picks them up. But you're right. I do kind of put away the shad style. Probably right before I pick up the swim jig. And so,
right.
I don't know.
Exactly. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, don't hear
I
us
like the results, but hey, I mean, I want to evolve as an angler as well, right? So I was like, okay, I mean, I can learn as we go. I don't got it all down.
I think Sam's spot on about how people, and we have definitely done this ourselves. People put down the jerk bait, I think, way too soon. You know, I really do, and it goes to exactly what Sam was saying there. You know.
Yeah. So you guys mentioned gizzard shad versus threadfin. We have gizzards in the lake. I mean, I catch them by accident. They're massive,
huge,
huge. They stink. They're disgusting. I remember when I first caught one, I was like, "What is this?" And we got threadfin as well. I mean, tiny. I mean, I've done like Gunnersville. There's threadfin shad like has their own zip code in that lake. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's so like. When you know in a lake, and Wyatt, you can jump into this too, that there's gizzard and threadfin, are they all schooling in the same way like threadfin do? Because I don't really see the gizzard shad unless they're on my sonar a little bit deeper. I don't see them like I see threadfin. They're more toward the surface in my experience. So break that down for me. Is there, if you know gizzards around you, should you fish a different way? Are they setting up differently? And same thing with threadfin, and how you like outside of just like, oh, I see them on the surface because it's a non-windy day.
Right.
And if you don't have sonar and you can't see the balls, like how do you approach that?
Yeah. That's one of the things we talked about with being able to decipher kind of what you're looking at is as much as you can see, you know, if you don't have live scope versus, you know, if you have live scope, you can tell a little bit better. But like you were spot on with what you were saying about depth. Depth is the most important factor in being able to tell these apart without being able to look at them and like really see the coloration on them. Gizzard shad tend to be more bottom oriented. They're bottom feeding type shad, where threadfin shad can eat more of like a smaller fish or phytoplankton up in the upper water column. Mm-hmm. They tend to spend most of their time a little bit higher. So if you see a smaller looking type of shad up in the column, you can tend to guess and probably be right in a sense that those are threadfin shad, where fish that are the threadfin shad tend to spend more of their time rooting around in the bottom because they're mud feeders. They spend not all, but most of their time either shallow or on the bottom, right, in that deeper area. So they're not as much floating up like threadfin would.
Is there something to be said about in those gizzard shad lakes to be fishing that sinking glide close to the bottom, which is risky business a lot of times on those expensive glide baits? But have you guys found success in doing that, or do you see that bass will still come up and like is it noticeable difference? Well, obviously they'll come up for it, but if you put it down there, are you noticing a higher catch rate?
Personally, I haven't. We haven't experimented with that enough. I mean, the primary lake and lakes that we fish at have a presence of both. I would say that more frequently when we're throwing bigger baits, that Sam and I are probably mimicking more frequently a threadfin type style, just because the main lake that we fish has a really, 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 like, in our opinion, uniquely healthy threadfin population where they'll get like just gigantic. And so that's what we find ourselves doing more. Now, that's not to say that, one of my most fond memories and swinging on a big fish in like early spring was like bombing out one of those burritos, the Mike Buca's burritos on the heavy sink, bombing that out into a school of gizzard that were just schooling down near the bottom, and picked up one of the biggest fish I've ever caught on that lake. But
which was?
I think it was like right around 6 pounds, which for the lake that we were fishing on is a pretty sizable fish. It was a spring, it was a pre-spawn type deal. And that burrito is actually smaller than the gizzard shad were. But I don't know. I don't know if I'd say that I've had personally enough experience to say like, oh, that does or does not make a difference. But there are also, in addition to one thing I think is probably worth saying, very small thing, but if you're an angler that's just trying to do the 101st thing to help yourself, there's a difference in how those shad look in a number of different ways. And Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, because I know that you kind of did this portion on the episode, but almost positive that thread fin compared to gizzard are the ones that have that kind of unique black dot on their like gill plate or up on their face. And so we both carry a black, spike it marker or whatever. And we know if we're fishing a plastic or even a hard bait that we're targeting those thread fin in the area.
Those rattle traps are money. The ones
exactly right.
Spot, I think it was called. My gosh,
that's exactly right. And so I think a lot of people don't even realize that's what those are for. I think a lot of people might peruse, the shelves at Bass
Super
Pro
Spot.
Shops.
I think it's
Super Spot. Yeah. And see those dots and not know what they are, and that's what they are. They're trying to mimic threadfin shad. So
you guys remember like reading Rainbow and it had like the more you know came across the screen every time you guys finish a shot, it's like the more you know as the star goes across the stream. You said gigantic threadfin. Qualify, like how big are these things? When I see threadfin, I'm talking like
6
3,
inches.
4 inches. Oh wow, 6 inches. You guys.
We have hooked threadfin on like A rigs and jerk baits in pre-spawn situations where every bit 6-7 inch threadfin that is like I don't know what to make of it. Like it's a golf course pond. I don't know if these things are just like some type of growth thing, but like I've got pictures I can send you guys of threadfin that we pulled up on the boat with, going through the side of it that are just like, what is this? It's like mutant,
Wow.
Yeah, but I think, in hearing what Corbin's saying there, that's like one of the major, misconceptions with people throwing, like kind of what we were talking about earlier. One of the misconceptions you see is people throw swim baits. And how do they throw a swim bait? They throw it out and they reel it like a crankbait and they keep it in that upper water column. Yeah. Right?
Well, they don't want to lose their $100 swim bait as well.
Well, not even $100. Tie on a jig head and put just a paddle tail on the back of it, right? And reel it on the bottom. Like, how often are people doing that? Oftentimes, probably not very often, right? You're probably fishing more of a craw or a jig style bait on the bottom, where how often are you throwing a 3-inch Kitech, dragging it on the bottom? Probably rare for most people.
That's how I fish my swim jig. So,
right. Well, there you go.
It gets demolished. So.
Right.
There you go.
So, there's that to think about, where that's not necessarily mainstream, right, in the fishing industry, to where that is something that could make a small difference if you are targeting those gizzard shad, like crawl that bait on the bottom, count the rocks type of thing.
Yep.
Where you may not do that on an everyday basis with a normal swim bait.
Wyatt, any thoughts or comments based off of everything you heard?
I've not put together the gizzard shad swimming on the bottom. Like I see him swimming on the bottom, but
yeah,
I mean, I'm going fishing tomorrow. I might bring the burrito with me.
There you go.
You're going fishing tomorrow?
Crazy,
man. So, would have lost that bet. All right. So let's talk about like environmental conditions. Anything, I feel like anything I say is going to strike. Like, oh yeah, in episode number 14, I remember paragraph 2, point B. That's why I love you guys. So when I say bluegill based feeding windows, like, is there such a thing? Like, what comes to your mind when I say that?
Yeah. So, boy, there are a lot of ways to interpret that.
Is it more of a seasonal thing, or is it
You're
more of a time of the day thing? Or
my mind is going both seasonal, but also like age of the bass, size of the bass type window, because there's a lot of data about preference towards different prey types, including different prey species, as we look at the evolution of the bass's life and as it grows. So when you say window, I know that most frequently people might think at a time of day or a time of month.
Between 130 and 242. Yeah.
Right. We don't have any data like that. That's like, oh, this time of day is going to be better for a bluegill type bait. You can get into ticky-tacky stuff with like shad spawn and stuff like that. But my mind more goes like towards the age of the fish. And I don't know if we want to save
the bluegill spawn type stuff.
And the bluegill spawn type stuff. Yeah.
Let's go there.
There's a lot of great information about this. So boy, one of my favorite studies that we've looked at for all three of these episodes is the one that Sam referenced earlier, and it's titled Disentangling the Ecological Role of Gizzard Shad in Kansas Small Impoundment Food Webs, Changes in Limnology, Fish Communities, and Predator Diets After Retinun Manipulation, which is a chemical. It's written by this gal named Elizabeth Renner at the Division of Biology in K-State University in 2022. This study, we extrapolate this data across a lot of the stuff that we look at. So I caution the listener to recognize that these are talking about smaller impoundments in the state of Kansas. So you need to understand that. A lot of people give us flack and they're like, not in my big Texas lake. It's like, okay, that's not necessarily what we're saying. But this study was great because they, over a course of 4 years, right, they sampled almost 3,000 largemouth bass stomachs. It was 2,715 stomachs.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And they were trying to, the study specifically was trying to understand if bass were selectively preying on gizzard shad compared to other foraged fish in the lake. And we got a lot of really valuable and interesting secondary results from looking at this study. It's like a 126-page dissertation, so there's a lot going on in the study.
You read it all, didn't you? I know you did.
I read a lot of it. I don't know if I'd say I read all of it. It's pretty dense. She did a great job. But what they were saying in the interesting results is that the data revealed that the frequency of occurrence of all fish in a largemouth bass diet was not associated with the gizzard shad relative abundance. Okay. So just because a certain lake or a certain area has a high amount or a higher amount of shad in it does not mean, according to this study, that bass is going to be feeding more on those gizzard shad. Now, I know this isn't, I'm getting to answering your question here. I'm kind of laying the foundation for these results. So the question then becomes, right, okay, if they're not eating more gizzard shad in lakes that they were putting in lots of shad, what were they eating, right? Yeah. That's the question you ask. And they found that the stomachs were most predominantly filled with fish, okay? Then aquatic macroinvertebrates. We're thinking like bugs, larvae, not crayfish. Mm-hmm. And then it came crayfish, okay? Now, this is what's interesting. When it came to those other fish, right, bluegill, cannibalism on other bass, and other fish like sunfish, brim-type styled fish, pumpkin seeds, stuff like that, were more frequent in the bass diet than gizzard shad. Okay. And what was interesting, well, the gizzard shad actually made up a pretty minor component of the diet overall. And this is where things, in my opinion, get really interesting. Notice how I'm sitting up for this because I'm excited.
Yeah. I'm excited.
So what she was able to do, she was able to manipulate the amount of gizzard shad in these different impoundments. And not only was she able to manipulate the overall population of gizzard shad in each given impoundment, but she was able to change different communal areas in a single impoundment by introducing the presence of this disfavorable chemical that would kill off the gizzard shad, right? So she could say, okay, in this population area where we're seeing a high presence of gizzard shad, we're going to kill them off, okay? Or in this impoundment, we're going to kill off the gizzard shad. Or in this impoundment, we're going to actually let the gizzard shad be abundant. Does that manipulate the frequency in which the largemouth bass are consuming gizzard shad? It did not. It didn't. But what was interesting is that the consumption rate of fish overall, and that huge umbrella of fish, remained consistent despite the altering amounts of gizzard shad in a given area. So what does that tell us?
Doesn't matter how much is available.
It doesn't matter how much is available. And it also tells us, and this ties into the metabolism and all this other stuff that we've been talking about, is that those bass are consuming other fish like bluegill at a consistent rate despite the presence of other available fish prey species, right? And so I guess the important takeaway here is that even if your lake is predominantly filled with shad, if your lake has a presence of bluegill, this data is suggesting that it does not mean that you should be throwing a shad type lure 365 days a year because that's what there are more of. In fact, it shows that at equal rates, or actually even greater rates, these bass are consuming fish like bluegill, brim, and stuff like that. This study, so the intermediate size bass, which they classified between 5 and 10 inches, had the highest frequency of fish in their diets. Okay, those were the size class that they were consuming the most amount of fish, and that makes sense. The
5 to 10.
5 to 10 inch bass had the highest frequency of fish in their diets, which makes sense as they're growing. The study stuff that we've looked at reveals that that's when they need a really high caloric intake. But this goes to what Sam was talking about earlier. Larger bass in the study, those that were classified as 10 inches and larger, that was like their class edge, right? Consumed more crawfish more frequently than fish. Okay. And that is true even despite the reality that of all of those 2,715 largemouth bass that were tested, fish consumption was still the highest item that was consumed, with almost 35% of overall diet. And so I know this is a lot of data, and I'm throwing this out like really fast.
No, I'm eating it up.
But what's so important here is to recognize that a bass's diet is so multifaceted, regardless of what you might think a given body of water has in it. That's exactly right. Now, we're not saying that obviously a bass isn't eating trout in a lake that doesn't have trout. Like, obviously, you have to have the prey available in your body of water for them to consume it. But they're still making in this study, have a very diverse diet. And gosh, we could talk to you about aquatic macroinvertebrates. I don't want to say that we kind of called that in terms of like the urchin takeoff and the dice takeoff here. We took a lot of heat from that at the beginning, but I feel like it has come full circle on us.
How do you like me now?
Yeah, honestly, we took a lot of flack from that at the beginning. But
let's talk about that 1 second. I have a theory on the gizzard shad. Why, even if there's a ton of them there, because one time in that bass's life, it ate it, smelled it, and it's like, hey, I don't want nothing to do with that ever again in my time. I don't care how big they are,
kidding,
how fatty they are, they stink. Second question, you said 35% fish. That leaves a large percentage of what?
Yeah, so it goes. Actually, the vast majority of their stomachs were captured by one of 4 categories. So the top category across all 2,700 stomachs was fish. That includes gizzard shad, bluegill, everything like that. That was 34.4%. Next was aquatic macroinvertebrates with 31.9%.
What?
Okay, and so.
Break that down. Like, what are you talking about here?
Yeah. So this is your bugs. This is your dragonfly. This is your hellgrammite. This is all your little critters that are swimming around in the water or are falling down into the water. Your mayflies. That amounted to 31% of these fish's diet. After that, at 19%, steep drop off was crayfish. And then 26% empty. And then there's a bunch. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's like 15 more categories that have very minute percentages.
Empty. I've been trying to feed these things every day. I
know it. I know it.
Freaking it.
That's the hard part.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. All right, so bugs, a lot of freaking bugs. I would lost that bet. Why did you guys at the beginning, like, why'd you call this and what flack were you taking? People were like, oh no way.
Yeah, dude. So we like right when we started, this was like I don't know, this is a very early episode.
Our
where we
second or third
episode, yeah, that we talked about this study, and we made like a short on social media, and we were like, are you overlooking this bait category when fishing? And we were talking about, lures like a Helgramite lure or like a cicada lure, or even, and this was kind of near the very tip of the beginning of like the dice explosion, right? And we were like, you're overlooking these baits because the data in this study demonstrates that bugs, or some type of aquatic macroinvertebrate is consumed at an exponentially higher rate than people could ever imagine. And we would have people in our comments being like, absolutely not true. This is ridiculous. You guys are crazy. This is all gimmicks. This is nuts. We had like 100,000 plus views and thousands of comments and stuff like that. And now we're like,
welcome to my Monday.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah,
and we're not even the ones making this data. Like, we're just bringing you what the
Killing the
science
messenger
has
boy.
said.
Yeah.
Come on a second.
Yeah.
Come on. My gosh, people
Yeah.
doing people stuff all the time on the internet. That's fascinating. Okay, I got a question for you. So I want to make sure we got to this. So when it comes to like shad schools, I've always noticed when I'm on the shad school, you'll catch them. They're all usually small. So tell me how bass use like wolf pack behavior around shad schools, and where are the big ones in that? Or are they not there? Or do they peel off once they hit like 5 pounds or 4 or 5 pounds? You're not even going to find them because they're feeding in a different way. I've had this conversation with other anglers, and I've heard people tell me that, like, hey, I see them on the scope, I see the shad. You got a bunch of 2, 3, 4 pounders. I don't see very many 5 pounders often, but I never see 6+ busting on shad. They're gone. They're feeding in a different way. What would you say to someone who says that?
I mean, I think that speaks to partially what Corbin said and how larger bass really are very strict with how they use their energy. They're very energy efficient because it takes so much to run their metabolism, keep their body, warmth, moving, all these types of things. They're much more stationary. It's just the style of how the fish, grows over time. Like those burst feeding small 2, 3, 4 pound, not as much 4 around us, but 2 and 3 pounders are more willing to expend that energy because if they catch one, that's more percentage of their body that they're able to turn over and metabolize and make it worth it to them. Now, we haven't looked into any research, that directly states, how these larger fish move around in wolf packs, but if there was something about that, that would be cool. I think we've all seen it on live scope, at least those that have it, how one fish will burst into a, group and then it'll spread them out and then cause another one to be able to burst in a different way. Right. Like I think
frenzy.
that there's probably some intuition there on how they're feeding, as that's very common in ocean, predation type of thing. So, I think that there we go again with underestimating a bass's knowledge and its brain structure and its capabilities, right? I think that is there. And I think that a larger fish like you're talking about is, has that idea that it's not worth it to push on those 5-inch gizzards, that it's normally not chasing, or 5-inch threadfin. It's normally not chasing up in the mid water column, where they're more of a benthic, on the bottom type of organism, eating those crawl like Corbin talked about in that latest study.
Yeah.
Gives me an idea. I don't know if we've already looked into this, but we should look into, if we haven't already, look into doing an episode like on schooling. Like that would be a really, I think, interesting if there's enough data out there that talks about like certain triggers for behavioral stuff. I feel like we've seen like tangentially, we've like kind of read about that a little bit, but
like bluegill stuff.
I
talked a little bit about that.
The KFO show. There we go.
Yeah, heck yeah. Yeah, we'll have to look into that. A lot of the stuff that we want to look into, there's just no data on.
There's no data. Yeah,
there's no data.
There's a surprising amount of no data out there. And when there is something, everyone kind of like gobbles it up.
Yeah.
But there's always these micro studies, and they happen in controlled environment. I mean, it's so hard to do bass testing, I would imagine. With
Yes.
any type of control whatsoever.
Yeah.
Very difficult. We had Berkeley on last week. They do control, and I don't know if you guys had a chance to watch that one, but it was fascinating because they were sharing things that I've never heard Berkeley share before for how they test. I was actually wildly surprised on what they shared, but very interesting. All right, I got a comment over here. If you got a question for Sam or Corbin, also we are 1 hour in. If you have not yet went over to Science of the Strike on YouTube and hit that subscribe button, do yourself and your fishing career a favor. Do that. These guys are awesome. I love them. Bass on AI's got a question for you guys. Do bass on rivers eat more bugs than the bass on lakes? It would make sense that they do, but any thoughts there?
That's a good question. Gosh, this is totally jogging my memory. We did a study. There was a study that, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to find this and send this to you all so we can get it. And actually, I've DM'd the Bass Thumb AI guy. I need to find this study because I cannot remember what it was, but we did a study that was talking about river movement and how, depending on the recession of the water line, those fish would become more active. And I think that it related to feeding structure or feeding patterns. I think that might have been from our water levels episode. Anyways.
Yeah, that sounds right.
We did something on this, but it's just I don't have it in front of me. Long story short, I would imagine so, just based off of what is available. I in my mind, I would imagine that there are more macroinvertebrates available in a water column of a running river system. That makes sense to me. Yeah. I cannot, off the top of my head, recall any data that specifically says that. But that would not.
The rising and falling, and it's picking up stuff, and stuff is
it's
feeding
exactly
into it.
right.
You're constantly grabbing.
That's exactly
bugs,
right.
And, yeah, that makes sense.
100%. Everything pouring into that river. Gosh. Yeah, that episode, that's killing me because I can just I can see the graphic in my head. I'll have to.
Disappointed in you, Corbin. Can't believe you couldn't.
I know. So it's like 11, I want to say. I don't know. I'll figure it out.
I know there's something with last time I was up on the Susky where they always have these little like bugs with a little red spot on them that the entire river shuts off whenever those bugs start landing on the water. And
really
they're having like 5 and 6 pound smallmouths just eating these little tiny bugs that are just all over the place.
There you go.
Shut off on everything else and only eat.
There you go.
Well, of mayflies last week at this one particular lake, just this one lake. I mean, they're freaking everywhere, but I didn't see any like on the water. So either they got chomped fast or they're still flying around. But those things are nasty. Can you swat them? They bleed everywhere, which is wild. I don't know if you guys have those where you guys are at. And I also remember going up to like Cedar Point and then being like everywhere, like the floor is blood because everyone's stepping on them. They're disgusting. Anyways. So tell me, when I say like the shad die off, like walk me through what you know about that, and I'm curious because do you have any thoughts on it? When does that happen? Help us understand.
For sure, and I think that I know that I think both Sam and I can talk about this. I think Sam might have even done more of this on the episode. We have where we live in Missouri on both Ozarks, Truman, Table Rock. And even our local lakes, we have usually a pretty significant shad die-off. In the past few years at the Ozarks, I feel like it has been remarkably prevalent. And this goes into part of why baits like a jerkbait or whatnot will be good during a spring season. But as the water temperatures drop and get colder and colder and colder, something, and Sam might have to refresh us here, something in that cold water or inside of the shad can't handle that cold water and it stuns them, right? And I think that's probably a pretty common understanding that shad can become stunned. And that is what ultimately will result when they become so stunned they can't swim at a speed fast enough to allow for the requisite water flow over their gills to keep them alive. And so it will actually kill them. And that's why you get a lot of people talking about jerkbait in cold water, because in those stunned moments when those fish are trying to, survive, they'll kind of make, these type of actions where they'll swim up and then they'll not really be able to, hence why a jerkbait a suspending jerkbait can be good.
Easy. Yeah.
The mechanics of what's going on behind there, I'm not sure if Sam, if you have more info there.
Yeah, it's really the range of numbers, you're kind of looking for is that 40 to 45 degree Fahrenheit range. That's when it actually starts to happen around the winter die-offs is what we found. But part of that, especially in the summer, you can even have die-offs happen. That is related to more of dissolved oxygen levels. So it's a multifaceted, approach here to why certain things can happen, like a shad die-off. But, exactly like Corbin was saying, is once these shad die-offs happen, like around us, our waters can freeze, right around us in Missouri. We see that fairly often. Then those shad cannot survive that. The typical shad lifespan is 2 to 3 years anyways. So it's not long, usually, and they can last up to 10 for some scenarios, warmer water down south type of thing. But we will usually see a very strong die-off when the water gets to around 40 degrees. And then if it really starts to freeze, you start to see them freeze in the ice because they just get so stunned, they don't swim down to try to get to that water.
I've talked about this before. People are like, well, how do they, repopulate? Not all of them die. Just a large portion of them will die.
Well, and Sam has, I'm not sure if you have it in front of you.
Yeah, I do.
You did some stuff about, I didn't know this about the shad spawn and the frequency and the volume that these fish are spawning. Absolutely blew my mind when we went over it.
Blow our mind, Sam.
Well, it's crazy that you think of a largemouth bass. You think the largemouth bass gets up there, it spawns, it's done for the year, right? Its whole goal in life is to build back up towards that next spawn. But for threadfin shad, especially, they hatch in only 3 days. So their incubation period is very, very short. And their larvae are pelagic. They can move about almost immediately. So with those threadfin shad having 3-day span to hatch eggs, they can constantly be going through a spawn throughout that month or 2 month span that they're doing that. So they're constantly spawning, and they can have and produce 5,000 to 20,000 eggs depending on their size.
Mm-hmm.
So like you're saying, not all shad are going to die in that die-off because there's so much being spawned at a given time. So that's why that shad spawn can become so vital to the success of the largemouth bass, because they're just pumping them out constantly. Once it has a spawn of eggs, it gets refertilized and has another spawn of eggs. And it just is a continual process like that. And that's why you see shad balls by the thousands.
Yeah,
it can take up a whole screen, right? Once it gets around those certain amount of times, because they're so successful in how fast they can spawn, it makes a huge difference in their ability to, stay important and stay relevant in an ecosystem.
Good luck catching fish when they're that big. I swear. Every time I see a giant shad ball, I'm like, oh yeah. And I get over there, I'm like, nope, not a chance. I see them hitting all around me, but when there's 100,000 of them, and I'm hoping mine's the slowest. Doesn't always work.
100%.
Yeah. Corbin, is that a hydrological map in your background?
It is. It is a hydrological map of the state of
we
Missouri.
got the same one. I got Ohio.
I noticed it. I was looking at it earlier, and I was like, that's cool. I think we might have the same map. So right on.
We might. Awesome. All right. Little side note. So if you guys got any questions, we're going to land these planes. These guys actually have button-up jobs. Wyatt and I just fish for a living, so we got families waiting for them. If you got a question for Corbin or Sam, please go ahead and throw that in the comment section. We'll get to that in just a minute. So here's a question for you, because man, one of the biggest things everyone always says is match the hatch. Is the match the hatch concept overrated in your opinion?
We could have
I pushed a button. We
could have an hour-long show on just this.
Corbin got up. You guys didn't see it. For those who are listening in, he did the whole thing where he got up in his chair. He's like, I got something to say, folks.
Yeah. Okay. So, wow. I'm going to say no. I don't think that Sam and I are ever going to say that you should abandon match the hatch. I think that is always a safe place to start. Always. However, I think that the fishing industry has trained anglers to be scared of thinking outside of the box and try to punish those people who really try to, if you show up with something that looks weird. Now, I will say, in recent years, or even just this past year, I feel like almost validated in seeing how the industry is actually kind of getting kind of funky, right? Right now, industry is being dominated by just the weirdest crap you've ever seen. The koike, all of the dice, everybody is in the race to produce some type of creature, centipede, dice, fuzzy. Like, I'm all here for that. I think that is awesome because it is getting away from the standard notions that have been preached top down for however long, right? Yeah, there you go. And so when it comes to Match the Hatch, you can't go wrong. But what we have found for a number of reasons as it relates to color and as it relates to some of that profile stuff, that stepping away from that can really be productive. Now, we talk about color a lot of the times, and we've put out, I don't know how many hours worth of material on different shows, and ours
we've talked about color the last time we were on. Yeah, 100%.
100%. Yeah. That is one of the quickest ways and the easiest ways to get away from matching the hatch that can be incredibly productive. And it doesn't mean that you necessarily have to go and buy a bait that is fire engine red and just be throwing that. Sam and I, we love bait pop. We'll put bait pop on, a jerk bait or something like that and make it to change a white jerkbait into a white jerkbait filled with red glitter that'll stay on for hours, right? That's the type of stuff that we want to encourage people to think about because it's scientifically backed. So again, I think that if you are new to a body of water, that matching the hatch can be a good place to start. But honestly, I almost think you can probably be as effective as doing just the opposite. We just had an episode with Oliver Nye, and he was talking about one of the number one things that he did when he was on the opens, or even to date, that when he would go and fish a lake that he has never fished before, he would do research about what is the most popular bait that they would be catching him on in that lake or in that area, what works. And he would do the exact opposite. He would intentionally try to be as different as he possibly could, and he found a lot of success doing that. And so there's nothing wrong with going, okay, I know that, the past 3 tournaments have been won on this bait. I'm going to completely ditch that, even if it's ditching matching the hatch, because our studies show, or not our studies, the studies that we've read show that bass their memory is unreal. And so all of this, getting away from matching the hatch, modifying baits and stuff like that, all at its core goes to unraveling or almost confusing a bass that has memory, the ability to remember being caught on a certain bait, right? So
you think they're really dialed into memory?
Oh,
dude,
yes.
100.
I found some really dumb ones that hit one day and then hit the next day.
Yeah,
there are same thing.
Yeah, and that again, nothing that we say nothing that we say is an absolute, but I'm telling you, dude, the memory, people don't understand it.
Like, to what degree do a lot of people don't understand it? Most people think largemouth bass are dumb.
Yeah. Right? So like, here's a great example. So like, if a lot of people, if I were to ask you, Darren, like, okay, what did you have for dinner last night, or the last restaurant that you went to, what did you have to eat, or tell me about the last time you went out to a restaurant, right? You're probably going to recall that memory, and you're going to be thinking about not only what you ate, but you might be thinking about maybe who was sitting across from you. You might be thinking about where you were, whether you were at a table or you were at a booth. You might recall the face of the server. You might recall the music that was playing or the smell of the restaurant that you were sitting in. You might recall if it was during, if you were there for breakfast or if you were there for dinner. When you recall a memory in your brain, you're not recalling a single fact about that memory. You're not recalling, oh, I had a cheeseburger and that's all I remember about what I had for dinner. You're remembering the whole scenario that brings you back to recall that memory. The same is true with these fish. And so when you think about, okay, I don't want to throw a spinnerbait because I know that a fish has seen a spinnerbait a lot of times. It's not just that the fish has seen the spinnerbait 1,000 times. It's that fish has seen a spinnerbait coming from that angle with the big massive shadow, that's the boat, with the sound of the trolling motor approaching, with the sound of you clunking around, ticking and stuff like that.
Forward facing sonar, all that stuff. Yeah.
They are capable of remembering these holistic scenarios rather than just independent factors from a scenario. And so Sam and I really try to change that up as much as we can. So not only will we say, hey, let's throw a different bait. We're going to say, let's throw a different bait. Let's throw a different color that we think is weird. Let's put some scent on it that we know that nobody else is probably putting on it. Let's make sure that we're casting extra long. Let's make sure we're being quiet while we're walking around on the boat. Let's turn the trolling motor power down so we can be a little bit stealthier and change all of the ways that we're doing stuff. You know, it's wild. Go check out, I think, episode 7 and episode 12. I don't remember. We've done a couple episodes on it. It is unreal. It's unreal. They're my favorite episodes we've done, if you can't tell.
I guess I got to have you guys on again. When you asked me if I had my meal, I probably would remember. I also would have remembered if someone, jacked a jaw through my lip. So jacked a hook through my lip. Yeah, that definitely would have been a core memory of dinner last night.
100%.
It's interesting you guys mentioned the angle, right? Because you run a bank, usually you either run it this way or this way. Most people don't come from different angles. If you can come from different angles, a lot of people don't throw baits on the bank, pull it from the bank, like a frog would be coming out or something from the bank. A lot of people don't think that. They're just literally like, there's the hole, I'm going to throw it there. Right. And this is why I constantly teach, like, learn how to frickin' skip your bait. You're going to unlock areas that 80% of anglers can't hit.
You gotta. I've noticed here recently. You have to skip it well, because if it splashes across the top of the water, the fish will spook. But if it slides across the top of the water, they won't even pay attention to it. It's the craziest thing.
Huh.
It was like I've sat there. I've watched so many fish here in the past month or two, and this, like, Gunnersville being super clear and Santee being super clear. Like, when I skip a bait and it just like across the top of the water, they don't pay attention to it. But if it skip, they will run from it.
I believe it. I mean, I believe it. Their ability. Sorry, go ahead, Sam.
No, I was just gonna say, and everything Corbin said is 100% true. But then also, if Corbin were to ask you, like 30 days ago, what'd you eat and where did you eat it? Like in the same situation, you're not gonna recall that near as much. And that's typically what people have come to know about a largemouth bass span of memory over time. So there is a constant reset. They don't remember everything forever, just like a human can't. But I'm just trying to say there's a limit to it. So that's why I partially think some of these older baits are starting to be able to make an entrance back 100%. Into the bass fishing world. Like, how did, I don't remember what it was, Hank Cherry
on the grub
or something?
Curly-tailed grub.
Yeah, like that. But that seems like, oh my gosh, he's throwing such a old bait, like no innovation to that. But it actually can be new to a lot of the bass that are in this fishery that might be 5 to 10 years old that are really on that larger side of things. So that's why some of those older fishermen, can pull out something out of their box that you're like, I've never seen that before, or whatever. And it can work super well initially, right?
You're pulling out the banjo, man. I know you're pulling out that banjo. No. Helicopter lures.
Yeah. Don't sleep on the banjo.
I did a video of the banjo and the helicopter. Literally, the first time I hooked up the helicopter, I threw it out, caught a bass. First cast.
I believe it. I believe it.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
All right, got a couple questions over here and some comments. Bass Thumb AI, 100% prosecutor. You set up your memory argument brilliantly. Everyone's just breaking you apart now. You're no longer a human.
Heck yeah.
You're a prosecutor.
100%.
Sharing about fishing. Workbench baits, dangling from the tree count.
I mean, hey, surely is not a common angle that they're getting attacked from.
No.
So.
I almost caught one from the tree. The problem is on the tree, obviously, if you get it caught, you have no leverage for a hook set. You have to get really lucky. But we've all done it. It's that you're like, wait a second. Let it pop here for a second. Tick.
It's like, I'm going to be screwed if something really big bites this, but why not? Why not? Oh my gosh.
Wyatt, how many tree dangle fish
I want to say two or three that I remember.
There you go. Everybody does. I mean, everyone's like, your odds are like near to nil. Everyone still does it. Let's just see. I'll just pull this back a few times. Oh my gosh. Workbench baits. Another question for you. What's the average lifespan of a bass?
Typical is around 10 years for what we'd probably see in our pressured waters. They can live up to like 16 to 20 years, though.
Not with water around.
It's not uncommon. Yeah.
That's got to be decreasing with delayed mortality, though, in years with tournament catching and stuff like that.
Let's finish the show on this delayed mortality. I had someone on the show, and I've been wrestling with this because I just personally find it really difficult to believe. I mean, maybe you guys have read some studies on it. We're talking about delayed mortality, and we're talking about kayak fishing, catch, photo, release, and we're talking about, when you throw them in the live well and let them go. And we've all seen the videos. If you really follow fishing after these tournaments, you got big bass just floating around everywhere. Then you have something called delayed mortality. And he was talking about how it might take a week or two. And the reason you don't see them floating everywhere because they're floating on the bottom, getting pecked away by turtles. And the percentages were so high, I still have a hard time believing them. He told me that on catch, photo, release, it was 20% delayed mortality rate. So every 100 bass that I catch, photo, put it back in the water, you're telling me 20 of those are going to die? And I started to think about all the anglers out there and how Wyatt catches 1 million fish a day, and there's so many fish are dying. And it's just hard. And it was like 50% for the live well, the weight on the tournaments. And I was like, no way, not that high, impossible. We went into a fish left. Like, you start doing the numbers, it just didn't add up to me. What are your thoughts on it?
Our most recent episode that we released like 2 days ago was all about this. We just released our longest episode yet. It was almost an hour and 40 minutes. That was all about fish care with both tournament settings and non-tournament settings. And I can't speak to the specific number that this person was referencing in whatever study that they're using to back up, but I can say without a shadow of a doubt that a significant amount of tournament caught fish are dying from delayed mortality, 100%, for a number of reasons. And it's like kind of scary in a way, like how bad it can be, and how easily it is to negatively affect a fish, whether that mean kill it or make it exposed to bacterial and viral infections just by your handling of it. Mm-hmm. But it's bad.
What's bad? Because I mentioned 20% for catch, photo, release and 50% for traditional.
Yeah. So here's a study that I can give you a specific number. So the name of this study: Evaluation of the interactive effects of air exposure duration and water temperature on the condition and survival of angled and released fish, by a guy named Andrew Gingrich and a bunch of other people, published in 2007. So this study was the first study of its kind that actually looked at the variables of water temperature and air exposure combined as it relates to how they affect bass when they're caught. There were studies before that did each of them independently. This was the first of them together. And they found that in warm water scenarios, which I'm trying to remember exactly what the water temp was to be considered warm water.
It's like 77 or something like that.
Yeah, it was 81 degrees.
Yeah.
So in water temp, so in summertime fishing, let's just call it that. In summertime fishing, 4 minutes of air exposure resulted in 50% mortality.
4 minutes.
4 minutes. So think about the second that fish comes out of the water. 4 minutes. And that's including
50%.
50%. Yeah.
How are they tracking? How are they tracking? How are they tracking this? How you even track delayed mortality?
They did it in tanks.
Okay.
Well, yeah. There were some in tanks. This was actually done on a Lake Opinacon in Ontario. It was a 3-day test, and honestly, I would recommend your listeners to go check out episode 24 because we break down this study. I mean, we spend almost 2 hours going down all this stuff, but it's bad. It is especially bad in summertime. I mean, when you think about a fish in hot water that is being caught in hot water, being put in a live well with hot water, that is spending time getting sloshed around in less oxygenated water compared to that water that might be deeper where the fish came from, then you're putting it in a coal bag or a weigh bag. You're putting it up, you're dumping it out into a bucket and getting all the water out of it. You're holding it up for pictures. You're putting it back into a weigh bag. All of that stuff is destroying things like the fish's slime coat. It is destroying their metabolism. It is destroying their ionic salt balance in their body. It's really bad for fish, especially in the summertime. Again, we just went on. You got to go check out the episode. I mean, it's pretty alarming.
I just got to have you guys back on for an episode just on that.
We have to.
Yeah.
It's the most important stuff we'll talk about. It's the most important episode we'll do. 100%.
That is all right. You got my attention.
It's scary, man.
No, it's scary. I make a living off it. Obviously, I love the sport.
Yeah.
I want to be knowledgeable because I'm a teacher within the sport.
Mm-hmm.
And
100%.
if we're decimating our bass populations by poor handling and misunderstanding and not thinking that this is actually hurting the bass populations, but everyone at the same time is like, oh, bass fishing is on the decline and they're just harder and harder to catch. You might be onto something, and it might be our fault.
It's 100%.
Yeah, I mean, fishing is becoming more popular too.
Yeah. Good news.
It's my job to make it more popular.
Right.
Right. But the good
Very
news, there are very small things, very small, simple things that you can do that can really help combat mortality and delayed mortality. Really simple things that does not require, a huge lifestyle change on stuff. Really easy stuff that people can do. So check out the episode.
Yeah, we're an hour and a half. Wow, you guys are awesome. So are you saying just 4 minutes, just taking it out? That it doesn't matter, right? 4 minutes, take it out, take a photo, put it back in. Does it break down in that study like different types of like kayak catch, photo, release versus traditional? No, it doesn't. It's just talking about
that one does not. That one was all about air exposure and water temperature. So there's a bunch of different timings of how long the fish was exposed to the air, and then different temperatures of water and the mortality as it relates to that. Sam, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say I had a little, bullet point thing from when we talked about in the episode that, like 60 seconds of air exposure can trigger physiological stress responses, causing them to have longer lasting stress once they enter the water. And anytime there's stress on a bass, their slime coats becomes, more porous and ability to attract viruses and things like that. That's if you didn't mishandle them at all, right? To damage the slime coat. Well, 3 minutes of 180 seconds of air exposure, if even intermittent, consistent leads to reflex impairments such as loss of equilibrium and a diminished burst swimming response for a while in these bass. Then you could jump to even like 4 minutes, like Corbin said, 50% of fish are dying at these warmer. And then you get to 10 minutes and they have severe high blood glucose levels and take much longer time to regain their equilibrium if they survive.
Yeah, 10 minutes? My gosh, what are you doing? Like having a picnic with it?
I mean,
they're taking pictures and, whatever. But it's crazy. Like you're affecting every time you catch a fish and you pull it out of the water, you're drastically affecting the possible mortality of that fish. So handling is vital to the success of your body water, your body of water. So
someone has made a comment relative to a human. A person goes underwater for around 45 seconds. So the average person, you're going to be good.
There you go. They're a little more resilient than us. Thank God.
Yeah, right. The Dodd father says Wyatt looks pissed, and you did, Wyatt. I looked up at you, and it makes sense because people are killing your friends. So it makes sense that you would be pissed about it. I'm not happy either.
Shake them off.
Wyatt's coming for you, folks. Take a bass out of the water for more than 60 seconds. He'll be in your front door.
That's right.
Oh my gosh. Well, folks, this was a sick show. You guys, of course, bring something that I have never had on the show before, which is just a different angle to bass fishing that I appreciate. I love what you guys do. I really hope if you guys weren't, whoever's listening now, it wasn't on at the beginning, which a lot of people come and go. So really quick, share what's kind of happening in the future. What can we look forward to?
Yeah, we are first of all, we've got some new merch in the pipeline. We have got our focus
Do you have
group
old merch in the pipeline that I don't know about?
Yeah, we've got merch live on our website right now.
It's hoodies.
We've got some hoodies and some shirts. We've got hats that are going to be coming out any day now.
Hats are sweet.
Yeah, haven't released the design. If you follow Goonie Wolf on Instagram, he designed our hat for us, so we're super stoked about that.
All right.
If you're interested in joining us on a journey that we think will be the biggest thing we ever do, applications for our focus group is open on our most recent episode on YouTube, episode 24. Go check that out. Honestly, we think it will be bigger than anything that we ever do. And we're just going to keep grinding, we're continuing building our jig line with Outcast for those people who want to help contribute to that. People have been DMing us with ideas and we relay those to Outcast. We've got some super cool stuff in the works with them. And yeah, I mean, we're
Herring's next.
Herring's next. We're going to, we're going to continue the mini series on Prey series and do herring. So we super appreciate being on with you guys. I mean, it's awesome. We have a blast with you guys. I mean, we really do. So seriously, anytime that we can come on, we'd be happy to, because we really enjoy being on the show with you guys.
Yeah, every couple of months we got to getting you in the rotation.
We're in. We are in.
Your thoughts? I know questions, thoughts to kind of close out the show.
A few months ago, this is changing my worldview here, because I come on here and I get the whole, fish can't see color, fish can't hear my rattle trap, jerk baits don't suspend. Next, you're going to tell me Bill Dance isn't a Tennessee fan. Everything.
Keep throwing that jig, Wyatt. You're doing something right. I'm looking behind you.
Right.
No kidding.
Guy's an animal. All right, folks. I don't have a guest next week, so if you got any questions, I got any thoughts of who we could. I mean, that's how the Science is Straight guys. That's why you guys are on. We had a fan reach out, like, "Hey, you guys need to check it. I'd never heard of you guys before, and now this is your second time on." So
heck yeah.
If you're like, "Hey, Darren, there might be someone I would love to hear on the show. Maybe you heard him on another podcast. Let me know."
Talk to Blake out of Florida.
I've had Blake on the show before.
Blake Abbey?
Yeah.
Freaking
I'm on
110 inches the past 5 tournaments he's fished.
Oh wow, bros. All right. You got my attention. All right, folks. Well, we will see you next Tuesday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern on the KFO show. The following week, I'll actually be with Wyatt down in Santee. And also the following week after that. So we're going to go 2 weeks not having a podcast. But we appreciate y'all. Hopefully this is going to help you become a better angler, or at least have you thinking about things maybe you haven't thought about before. Head over to Science of the Strike on Instagram and on YouTube. Watch their latest, which I'm going to be doing here soon. And you guys have a great week. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.